Okay, so good afternoon. This is the Steve Mazzacane podcast. This is the day before the 2022 election. We have a few things to go over. We'll talk about the election a little bit. A lot of questions came in on who do I think is going to win, what are the numbers, all this other kind of stuff. On local stuff, we often don't have a really good numbers. We don't really know. There's not a lot of polls taking place. There's some statewide polls. I think there's definitely a feel that some of these races locally are in play. They're not just guaranteed to one side, but we're kind of all over the place on the polls. But the momentum from a national standpoint is very much with the Republicans. And we'll talk about some of the numbers in a second. Before, if we look at Real Clear Politics, I just want to go to this now, and we look at what races. So first, the Senate, Real Clear Politics is projecting that the GOP picks up 3 seats. That means they would have control of the Senate. They're expecting the House to get a lot of seats. They'd have control of the House. So you'd have basically a president that would have no power for the next 2 years. And that seems likely. Now, for a few reasons. One, it's a pretty common thing that happens 2 years after a new president comes in. Happened to Obama, happened to Trump. So it happens that people go the other way. But everything is going against the Democrats. The inflation we see was not helped by that final stimulus package, which I talked against and a lot of people talked against. They kept throwing money at a problem. People have a lot of money. Unemployment is a good number right now, which means people have money coming in. So demand for things is still high. Inflation is still high. Cost of goods is still high. And that's going to reflect on the party that's in power. And right now that's Biden. And you can make the argument that he doesn't have a huge impact of it, but Biden's the first one posting all over social media. The White House is posting how gas prices, if they drop 10 cents, is a big thing about they drop. They're taking credit for things that they may or may not have an impact of. Then you also have to take responsibility for those things as well. And so the Democrats are taking it on the chin nationally. And we'll see if that plays a role locally along the state. Now, the top of the ticket, if I go and I look at realclearpolitics.com, and we will look at the governor race and in Connecticut. So latest governor polls, let's try to look at the map here. So in the map, right now they have Lamont with a significant hold. It looks like 2018 he won by 3 points, nothing significant. The polls are showing Lamont with a massive lead. The last one is Quinnipiac done a week and a half ago. Lamont up 15 points on that. Quinnipiac tends to lean, in my opinion, more Democrat. The Hill Emerson was Lamont plus 11. Connecticut Examiner, I don't really know what the Connecticut Examiner is, but they had Lamont up 7. So the closest any poll is showing Lamont by 7 points. Unless there's a miracle late, Lamont's going to be your next, or you're reelected as governor. Connecticut, let's go to the different ones. Connecticut 1, John Larson, looks like in the landslide. Connecticut 2, Courtney in a landslide, or looks like it. They don't really have polling on that one. So in any event, looks like Lamont's going to win the poll in Connecticut. And that's, while nationally Republicans are picking up ground and the country's going more red, they're probably going to win the Senate and House. You do have that one line on the top of the ticket that is pretty much Lamont. And then you have Blumenthal, who will win easily. So the top of the ticket helps Democrats. Now, that's from a voting standpoint. Very often, when the feeling is that your guy is going to win, there's no huge hurry to go vote. If you think if you care about the Lamont race, or you care about the Blumenthal race, and that's all you care about, there's really no need to run out and vote. So Democrats are going to push like crazy to get their base out there. Go ahead and vote. On a local level, we see a couple thousand absentee ballots. It's not anywhere near the 7,000 we had for the presidential race, but it is higher than it was 4 years ago. No surprise there. Both parties now are getting behind pushing absentee ballots. They will almost always favor Democrats. So when the numbers come in on election night, if they're tied or close, the Democrat will win, because absentees, once they're counted, will almost always favor the Democrat. Still, The question with absentees is, does an increase in absentees mean an increase in voters? Did people come out who hadn't voted in the past? Or are they the same voters who used to vote on the day of? They're just voting early. And that seems like what is leaning towards. And that's why, listen, we have absentee voting in every state. It doesn't change whether a state is a red or a blue state. And on the ballot this year is this question of early voting. And there are some Republicans that seem to be against it, but most states have it. And it doesn't really change. Red states have it, blue states have it. It doesn't change the outcome significantly of elections. I'm all for having early voting. That makes a lot of sense. It's stupid to be the one or two states that doesn't have that yet. So before we start talking about the races locally, the 102nd, the 98th, that sort of thing, this weird, I don't have words besides weird, story came up today. And this happens in the 12th district race. It really has nothing to do with Christine Cohen. It has everything to do with the Killingworth Democratic Town Committee and Paul Chrissy, who's the Republican candidate. And Mr. Chrissy put out a video where he talked about this. So I'm just going to read some of the things that have happened here. And I'll give you my take on it. But the Chrissy campaign received a message. And it said, "You're absolute garbage and deserve to die." Okay, so that's, as unfortunate as that is, this is not uncommon. Candidates get shit like this on a regular basis. It's not surprising. It happens. But what people don't know, and this is why I kind of think this may be true, like people who are my age, a little older, a little under, whatever it is, and younger, realize that when you send that, you know the IP address, you sometimes know the email address, you know the phone number it's coming from. You're not sending that anonymously. There's always some way to figure it out. So according to the Chrissy campaign, they identified this person as a William Tobelman, who just so happens to be the vice chair of the Democratic Town Committee in Killingworth. So he starts posting things like how sad and disappointing this is. And that's not, look, every candidate likes to play the victim a little bit, and that happens, right? So every time a Democratic sign is vandalized, oh my God, this is terrible, and it's right, and this is awful. However, this is a little different. When you have evidence that it's a member of a DTC who are elected by Democrats to represent them, this is not just some schmuck on the street saying stupid things, right? This is somebody who was elected by his fellow Democrats to represent them, posted this. Now, this is from the Chrissy campaign. Then we get the Killingworth Town Committee puts out this long thing saying that this is a false attack, and Chrissy's basically an ass, and he's all this other kind of stuff. I can't read it anymore, and I'll explain why I can't. Then, to Chrissy's credit, he called the police and let them know. And so I'm going to play, hopefully it works on here, the police call that Mr. Chrissy got.
Hey, Mr. Chrissy, this is Officer Branford Police. I just want to I did make contact with Mr. Tobelman. He said he apologized. He wanted me to formally apologize to you. I guess he was just, he didn't mean to cause any alarm. He was inebriated that night, so he was responding to a bunch of the political text messages he had gotten that past week. So he apologized. Everything checks out. I looked into Killingworth, and no violent crime, no incidents with him in general.
So there's a recording from the police department. This person gets caught out. The police are contacted by Chrissy. This person calls that person. He apparently accepts responsibility. Now, the police officer said Mr. Tobelman versus, what's the name on it again? So the Killingworth DTC this is made up. This is fake. William Tobelman is the name on it. So I went on the DTC page and I said, wait a minute, do you have an answer for this? You're denying that this person did it, yet we have a recording from the police saying they spoke to this person. Do you have an answer? And the response from the Killingworth DTC to me, publicly, by the way. So there's no question on whether this should be public or not. If you're posting it publicly, you have to take questions on it publicly. You can't hide after that. You have posted it publicly. And by the way, you're hiding behind the Killingworth Democrat tag. Give us your real name for Christ's sake. No, don't hide. You just, what is that? But if you're going to post it publicly, you can't then block or deny or eliminate comments that question evidence that you're presenting. And they repeat to me, this is not William Tobleman. And I said, who is it? Like, who says this is not William Tobleman? You could say, hey, it's his cousin, his uncle, somebody else, whatever it was. You didn't say any of that. You just said it was not. So who are you hiding? And I posted that. Then I got blocked. And then Mr. Chrissy, who was responding to some comments, also got blocked. And this is becoming a common theme with these political parties. You know, remember that the people that are running political parties there's no sense of, let's look at all the facts, let's look at the evidence. Their job is to push their party, and that's it. And a lot of times that job is to demonize the other party. Now, would I like more evidence? Sure. Was the Mr. Tobleman also this person? Or was there another Mr. Tobleman? How many Mr. Toblemans are there in Killingworth? Is it like a massive name? Is it like a Cosgrove name in Brantford? Like, is it a well-known? Who knows? We have no idea. We ask questions, and we're blocked by a political party. They blocked a journalist, and they blocked a candidate. Now, this has nothing to do with Christine Cohen, and it shouldn't impact an election. But when you have elected Democrats within their party, elected to represent that person or that party, sending messages like this, and what tells me, just my gut, is that it's actually that person, is not only the apology. Oh, by the way, who apologizes through the police to somebody? The guy goes, hey, officer, can you apologize to him for? What is that? Grow some balls, man. Like, what is that? You apologize through somebody else to the candidate? You had no problem sending a nasty email. I hope you die, basically, it said. And then you apologize through the police? What planet are we on? And this has happened before. We saw the Madison Democratic Town Committee, it was like all-out assault on Eileen Banish, who was the head of the RTC and the Chamber of Commerce at one time. Just an all-out crazy assault. We watched the Brantford DTC run what was probably the worst, most dishonest campaign we've ever seen locally a year ago against Jamie Cosgrove. I don't know what's going on, and it makes it worse because it's kind of Democrats, and there's that sense of superiority and their moral righteousness nonsense. But this is amazing. I've been blocked. The candidate's been blocked from a Facebook page for asking questions on a conversation they started. They put it out there. Now, I don't overreact when an average person sends messages like this. It happens. We all like to, right? So in Brantford, a couple years back, somebody spray painted anti-Semitic or racist stuff on a bridge. And oh my God, this is terrible. How is this happening? It's happening because kids are kids. Candidates who get their signs vandalized, kids are kids. You know, we can play the victim all we want. They put an article in the patch and our signs are vandalized and this is racism. And no, it's not. It's just kids being morons. That's what they do. Since the beginning of time, that's what they do. There's no ulterior motive. We're not a racist town. We all play the victim. And Chrissy may have had a little bit of that. But in this case, it's not coming from a kid. It's coming from a grown man. Someone who clearly doesn't understand basic electronics and basic digital whatever, because when you send the stuff in, there's a trail. When you comment on Brantford 7 anonymously, I don't do this, but I can very easily go back and find out the IP address, find the reverse, whatever. If you were to put a significant threat in the comments, I would send it to the police officer. I would say, here's the IP address. Here you go. This is different. And I think Chrissy handled it the right way. I don't know what the Democratic town committees are doing anymore. And it's late in the race. We're 12 hours before, whatever, 24, 12, 14, 16 hours before the polls open. But it's absurd. It's just absurd that this should be happening from members of the DTC and RTC. Don't tell me you care about democracy. Don't tell me you care about civility, or let's just be honest. How are you, as a member of the DTC, now better than Trump? You sent a message that told somebody you're absolute garbage and deserve to die. And now you want to take the high road with Trump? You're better than somebody? What planet? You apologize through the police department? What is that? What kind of apology is that? Hey, buddy, tell a friend of mine. What is that nonsense? Be a man. The Killingworth DTC, you put out a press release slandering Chrissy, who did nothing wrong. You have the police recording he posted publicly on their page. Called him out. And you got blocked for it. Don't pretend for a second you give a damn about civility or accuracy or being decent human beings, because you don't. You don't care. You have no problem sending this, drunk or not. But if you were drunk, don't you think when you were sober, you'd make the problem right? Instead of then going on your social media pages and slandering the campaign and the candidate that you did this to. This is messed up. And it's a pattern we're seeing. I can't remember the last time I remember RTCs doing anything like this. DTCs, that in my experience, in covering the 12th Senate District, these 7-8 towns, a little bit of more East Haven, some North Haven, whatever, the DTCs, I see this far more often. It's why people are leaving the DTCs. They're not leaving the Democratic Party. They're leaving the groupthink, crazy cult membership nonsense that is Democratic town committees in these towns. This nonsense of, if you're not with us, we hate you. We abhor you. You're disgusting. If you don't believe exactly what we tell you to believe and vote exactly the way we tell you to vote for, then you're awful and terrible and hate puppies and children. You deserve to die. And that's the kind of messages they send. This is what's happening all over the place. And if you're wondering, Democrats, while you're about to get your ass kicked in this election nationally, this is why. This nonsense is why. I don't know who's going to win that race. That could be a tight race. There's some clearly, like Guilford's going to be massively for Cohen. Brantford's going to be for Cohen. All the other towns are smaller. They may go for Chrissy, but they may not be enough to make up the huge advantage that she's going to have, especially in Guilford. So I don't know who's going to win that race. He certainly has spent a lot of money. I think he's had some messaging issues. I'm not quite sure what his message is all the time. But he represents, in some cases, his ideas were balanced. I don't find him to be far right by any means, and he was not the darling of the Republicans. That said, nobody deserves this nonsense. And if you are a Democrat and you think that's okay, then don't ever talk to me about Trump again. Don't ever tell me how you hate Trump. Don't tell me he's an asshole or he's mean or he's sexist or you just send a message to a candidate saying, tell him to die. You're better than who? Not better than anybody. It's a bunch of nonsense. And it will only end when the higher-ups, the elected officials, and I'm not putting any pressure on Christine Cohen now. This is election. We can handle this afterwards. This shit has to end. The Sean Scanlons of the world have to end this. The Cohens of the world, the Comeys of the world, the elected Democrats in those towns, the first selectmen or first select women in those towns, the mayors in those towns have to be leaders on their DTCs to say, this is not behavior we are okay with. Give a little bit of credit to the Guilford DTC. Years ago, they had a chairman who was nuts, like just crazy far left. And then suddenly some really smart older people in the party said, this is not what we are. They changed that. We need that to happen in more of these towns. It's getting crazy leading up to this election. In any event, we have an election tomorrow. And in some cases, usually I give some sort of endorsement. I can tell you how I'm going to vote, but it's hard because a lot of these are very close races and they often bring very different things to the table. So in governor, I'm going to vote for Lamont. The reason I'm voting for Lamont is I just haven't seen anything from Stefanowski that seems viable. I haven't seen a viable plan. I'll admit, 4 years ago, I had a bad taste in my mouth from this idea that we're going to eliminate the income tax. We're never eliminating the income tax. It was a nonsense idea, and it kind of made no sense. But now, Lamont is probably as Republican a Democrat as you're going to get. He's fiscally been fine. I think he's taken credit for some things that may not have been his, but sometimes you get credit for things that happen on your watch. Now, the pandemic was awful. His guidance through that was fine. I think he could have done some things better. I didn't like that he gave it up to the towns to decide on the masks when he could have just did a statewide mandate and saved everybody that massive headache. How he handled closing down and reopening salons was a mess. But compared to many other states, he did a very good job on fiscal issues. He is far more conservative. The far left in the Democratic Party doesn't love Lamont. He's a Greenwich Democrat, which means typically socially, anything goes. We're going to fight for that right for abortion, pro-choice rights, or abortion rights, or gay marriage. We're going to fight for all those social issues. Fiscally, we're going to be a little tighter. He tends to be balanced with me. So I'm going to vote for Lamont. The state Senate race, I am very likely going to vote for Christine Cohen. And the reason for that is I think she has a track record of getting things done. Yes, she's left. Yes, she has catered with the Environment Committee and things of that nature to the left, but she also is on the shoreline, so it's important to be there. Nothing against Paul Christie, but it is hard when you've been in town in the district for 4 years, have not served on any local committees, not served on any bodies, and then you run for office. And you have the right to do so, but to then say, I'm going to represent you. Now, we talk so much about affordable housing, right? And I do on this podcast. And that's an issue that has a very different meaning in Brantford than it was in, say, Greenwich, right? The people who want to push that in Greenwich saying there should be affordable housing there. Here in Brantford, we don't get it counted. We have 7 different towns in this district, and they all have different impacts on those laws. So if you haven't been here for a long time, I question whether or not you can understand. I've lived in Brantford for 15, 16 years now, and I've covered news, so therefore I understand it a little more. But how do you come close to the experience that a Christine Cohen would have, or a Ray Ingraham would have, or even a Comey would have, or a Scanlon would have, who grew up in the area? They're from the area. They know the area. They know the different towns. They know the nuances. They know all the neighborhoods. And it's hard to ask somebody, you've lived here for 4 years, come in and represent them in the state, especially at the state Senate level, where you are a bigger fish in that pond. It's not one of over 100. It's one of whatever the number is in the Senate. So I will likely vote for Christine Cohen. I shouldn't say likely. I'm going to vote for Christine Cohen. And that's not against any stances that Chrissy has. I question if somebody after 4 years can jump into a town and then know 7 towns that he's not all that familiar with and represent them. I question them. The Ingraham-Comey race, I'm not going to lie, I'm personal friends with Ray Ingraham, and I know Robin Comey very well. Robin Comey has made her bones on early childhood education. That's her thing. On one of her posts, one of her people said it's education. It's not education, it's early childhood education. She was on the BECC. I know it. I worked with her there. She lives and breathes that. What I ask myself when it comes to local is, are we working to get money back to the local area? Are we working with the local officials? Do we have a strong working relationship with them, or are they on the same page? Jamie Cosgrove has worked very closely with Christine Cohen. Jamie Cosgrove has worked very closely with Sean Scanlon when he held that seat and represented 2 districts in Brantford. Comey does not have that relationship with the Cosgrove campaign, the Cosgrove people. So it has not been a focus of hers to work with them. She was very big on Brockett running 2 years ago, 1 year ago, on that ugly campaign. So while I give her a lot of credit for what she's done early childhood, I give her credit on EpiPens, pushing that law. I don't know if she is bringing everything that can come to Brantford back to Brantford. I also question, and her and Cohen, in fairness, Cohen both took credit for some study that happened over by Lenny's by that bridge. That was in the works way long ago. Jamie and Scanlon have been working on a study for that whole road for a while. So they're taking credit for things I'm not so sure of. Ray is part of the Cosgrove team. Ray has helped in all the things he's posted, with the exception of one mailer where he posted some things that weren't true about Comey's votes. But he did help get the animal shelter done. He was instrumental in getting the senior center. The senior center is a big one, the community house, because the Democrats at the time were fighting it. And Ray was the face of the RTM that had to fight for that and get that through. You have that in large part because of Ray Ingraham. All the other projects that we saw, all the playgrounds that we saw, those are things that Ingraham has worked with the Cosgrove administration since they've been there. So this team that has gotten so much done in town, from foot park to upgrades to roads to senior centers to all the projects that we see, a new Walsh school, he's been an integral part of. I think it's worth taking a shot, having him up in Hartford and seeing if he can help get us more, because he is working so close with Jamie. He's working so close with the RTM, with the Board of Finance, and has such experience working on the local level. So I think I will be voting for Ingraham. Not a knock on Robin Comey. And in fact, all of these people, I'm not voting for Chrissy, but I can understand why somebody would vote for Chrissy. I'm not voting for Comey, but I can understand why somebody would. I voted for Comey 2 years ago. I endorsed Comey 2 years ago. And I understand that. That makes sense to me. But that's the way I'm voting. So it's not necessarily an endorsement, but I'm telling you why I'm voting that way. With Christine Cohen, I have a lot of experience even working with her, getting bills through. If there's questions, if there's issues, she's extremely responsive. So I can't question that she's doing the job that she was supposed to do. On the other race, Moira, I forgot her, Rader. We can talk about this all day long, but Rader's going to win so easily. It's just not a district up for grabs for the Republicans right now. Guilford has gone so far left that she's going to win in a landslide, and she would win that landslide against anybody. That's just the direction that Guilford has gone in the last few years. While Branford has gone a little more conservative, Guilford has gone much, much further left, in part because of that Board of Ed fight they had that became national news, that sort of thing. So that's my take on the election. Can we go wrong if we vote for the people I'm not voting for? No, I think we're going to have good representatives no matter what. But overall, that's the way I'm voting. And I just try to do it because for transparency purposes, I would put out there, this is the way I'm voting. Yes, I'm voting for Blumenthal. I cannot, in good conscience, vote for whatever Levy or whatever her name is. And I am absolutely voting to allow early voting. I think it's imperative that we do it. It's embarrassing that we're one of the few states that doesn't allow that, and we should get along. And we get to a point that we should have that in Connecticut. Why are we one of the few states not having that? It makes no sense to me. That said, we will likely be live tomorrow at 4. If not, we're definitely going to be live tomorrow at 8. And it's every year we do election night coverage. We'll be here. If there are questions, comments, things you want to know prior to that, send those in. Send the text messages. Text me, call me, whatever you want to do. And let me know what you're thinking. And we'll be live, I think, tomorrow from Ray Ingraham's headquarters. But after that, we may end up anywhere. But every year we do this, we're live. Come join us. Any questions, comments, we'll have the results as they come in on the board, as the phone calls come in. I'll be calling out the numbers. We'll know the numbers on the Ingraham-Comey race fairly quickly. We will not likely know the numbers on the Chrissy Cohen race very quickly for main reasons. We have 7 towns. So we have to wait for all those numbers to come in before we have an answer on that. Governor will probably look at larger news, WTNH or something, or Connecticut Mirror to get those numbers, and we'll be talking about those live as they come in. And as always, election night's a fun night. We get to see numbers coming in. We get to see cheers or sadness in whatever room we're in, and we'll talk to the winners and go from there. Until we see you tomorrow, guys, it's 4:30. I hope you enjoyed this absolutely amazing day. I might get some tennis in, and we will have, Mary, 1,700 absentee ballots. Yeah, that's not a huge number, but yes. So basically, I think of the 1,700, there's probably, 1,900 Democrats, 300-400 maybe Republicans, and the rest are unaffiliated. So, Democrats are going to have an advantage in the absentees. If it's a dead heat after the same day voting comes in, then Democrats win that race. So I'll give you an example. In the Ingraham race, right? Ingraham-Comey, if it's dead tied before we get to the absentee numbers, then Comey won. And we could just call it. We'll also look at some interesting things there. Like if we see Comey's going to win Short Beach by a big margin, right? But if we see Short Beach be really tight, we can say, hold on a second, Ingraham may be able to pull off this upset, right? So the early numbers, we have some indication on how these districts have gone in the past. And we'll talk through this tomorrow night if you join me at 8 o'clock. Okay, it's 4:31. I'm going to play tennis. I hope you all have a great night. I will see you tomorrow, possibly at 4, but absolutely by 8 o'clock. Have a great night. And no matter what you do, please get out and vote. I'll talk to you soon.